Welcome back to the Block Party NBA podcast. I'm joined by the one and only King Wells. How's it going, dude?
It's going very well on this beautiful July 25th, 2022.
We are amidst the NBA offseason. We have a lot to catch up on / talk about, and I think without further ado, we should just get right into it. I wanted to start with party fouls today because there was one that broke this morning that I think is very appropriate. So if it's cool with you, we'll jump right into party fouls.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I don't know how much I'd consider this an actual party foul because I think it goes without saying that this was probably in the mix regardless. But today there was a story that broke, I believe it was a Woj bomb, that Boston had offered Brooklyn a package centered around Jaylen Brown. Now, wouldn't classify that as the party foul because I think that was probably in the mix at some point for the Boston Celtics, just given the hype around this Kevin Durant idea and the X factor that he could really become on a title contender. But the party foul has to be what followed up, which was a tweet then sent by Jaylen Brown, which said "Smee," basically just implying that he's not very happy with this. So my question to you would be, who leaked this information? How did this information get out? Because I doubt the Boston Celtics wanted it out. And is this something that could possibly damage the chemistry / I guess just Jaylen Brown's long-term outlook with this team? Is this something you think he would take personally? Is this something that was kind of probably like any player would have saw coming for the most part? Or do you think this is a party foul and just in the sense that Boston played this kind of sloppy and let this information kind of leak or get out, and now it seems like Jaylen Brown is pretty pissed off? So that was my first party foul. I wanted to start with that because it was kind of the big opener this morning, big news story from this morning. But I'm just curious on your take on that situation, how you think Boston's going to move going forward, if they're going to have to tread with a little bit more caution now, and do you think this package around Jaylen Brown is probably the favorite at this point to land Kevin Durant, just based on what we've seen from certain offers out there? So just curious on your take on this Jaylen Brown Brooklyn Nets situation.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call it a party foul. I mean, we've been saying, first off, is I think that I don't think that offer, I'm assuming a bit here, but if I had to guess, I would say that offer was not like a recent thing. Like, I think that probably happened back when everybody was offering them stuff. So
Right.
it's not really surprising to me. I don't think it's a party foul. And I don't think it was leaked out of Boston because they have no reason to let that out. I would say definitely it's something on the Brooklyn side because they're trying to set a price for Durant, trying to show that they're not messing around. So I think it makes a lot more sense that that's where it's coming out of. As far as it being the best offer on the table, I mean, Jaylen Brown is a very, very, very nice young player piece. So maybe, but obviously not good enough for Brooklyn. But yeah, no, I think very interesting that Boston, even with how well they did last year, chose to kind of throw their name in the hat there, or whatever the expression is.
Mm-hmm.
But it's for Kevin Durant, so it's not super surprising either.
Do you think at this point the Brooklyn Nets would be leaning in terms of the best package that's been offered? Because from what we've heard about, at least the Toronto package, Scottie hasn't really been in those talks. So do you think Jaylen Brown is the most likely scenario, just based on 25 years old, went to the NBA Finals, looked amazing in the NBA Finals, looked really, really good throughout the playoffs? If you're kind of a team like Brooklyn that's not necessarily trying to tank and you want young, good players that are all-star level, wouldn't Jaylen Brown be the top of their list? And do you think the hesitancy is coming from the other assets being included in the deal? Do you think it's just a matter of Brooklyn wanting too many picks? The other thing I heard is they possibly wanted Marcus Smart. And to me, that's kind of well...
They need to for salary too.
Right. But at that point, it's that's two pretty big defensive pieces from Boston's system. And it kind of changed the whole structure of how granted, with Durant on the team, they would still be very, very good. But does that...
And remember, they just picked up Brogdon for nothing. So
that's true.
If they got rid of Smart, No, I like Smart more than Brogdon myself. Don't get me wrong,
For
but
sure.
it's not like Brogdon's a slouch there. He can slide right in.
And do you think that is Derek White still under contract for them?
I actually heard that Derek White might have been part of that deal as well.
Okay. So it'd be
I think he
White
is under
Smart.
contract maybe for this year, but that's it. If
Do
I
you,
had to guess.
is that the is that the one you could see most likely happening just based on the assets? Like that to me, the fact that they're willing to part with Brown, I think is pretty huge because I think if you look at like most of the pieces that have been offered in these packages, I would say Jaylen Brown would probably be the one that would be in the Nets timeline in terms of like where they're trying to go. What's causing like where is this hesitancy coming from? It's clearly coming from Brooklyn's side, but is it just that they want picks? Is it that they want Smart and that salary that like that just doesn't work out for Boston's like grand scheme? Like what do you think is stopping this one from going through? Because on paper this one makes kind of a lot of sense to me.
Well, I mean, it's probably two things. The most likely is that it is that they just want, a shitload of picks along with that, and Boston's saying, well, no.
Right.
Um, that's probably what it is. But the other thing would be that maybe Brooklyn's just not as high on Jaylen Brown as other people, So could be that too.
Do you think this information? So you would guess that this is actually something like a previous trade from maybe even a few weeks back. Do you think this was purposely
Yeah.
leaked by the Nets? Could that
I
be a
mean, it wasn't purposely leaked by anybody else, so
right?
yeah, if I had to guess,
Right.
it came from there.
And what would their intention behind that be? To maybe persuade them to kind of be pigeonholed into like a scenario where they're like, well, now we got to move him because Jalen's not happy, so we really got to go through with this. Is that the idea? And then maybe they
I,
budge and they take or they give more picks, maybe.
I think it's more for everybody else,
Hmm.
all the other teams to say like, hey, this is what we said no to. So if you can't beat that, then don't even call.
Oh, okay. So kind of like
You
setting a
know?
benchmark in a sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you think that? So there was also another report that came out today that Kyrie Irving plans on staying with Brooklyn and playing regardless of Kevin Durant being there. Um,
hmm
at this given point, what do you think is going on between Kyrie and Durant? I know that's really hard to say, but does it seem to you like they're on good terms? Because every day I'm, I'm
No.
I'm back and forth between that's now I'm kind of getting the vibe they're not, but from my understanding, like they weren't really mad at each other, and I thought the whole Kevin Durant thing was actually to get Kyrie paid, but like
Doesn't look like it.
is it looking now more like they're not on good terms? And do you think this is a result of Kevin being frustrated with Kyrie and just like how he handled last year? Do you think that's where this is stemming from?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things, but I think that's definitely part of it. It's like you said, it's really hard to say because KD's been kind of ghosting everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I kind of like that he's doing that too, by the way. But um, yeah, it's just hard to say. I don't. But if I had to lean one way or the other, I would say I would probably assume that things are not all rainbows and lollipops in that locker room.
Right. And do you think, in terms of timeline on the Kevin Durant trade, or I guess this scenario,
Yeah.
do you still have this going into like do you still because you said last time we went on that you could
Yeah.
see the Brooklyn Nets having both of them on their roster to start the season? Is that do you think where this is still leading to based on what we're seeing?
Right now, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna say also if that does come into play, if they both start the season with Brooklyn and they're both there, how do you envision that going, given that Ben Simmons would then be obviously added to rotation and they're both phenomenal basketball players, Kyrie and Durant, that they could probably make it work. But could you envision a world where they come out swinging and they do really well? Or do you think that because of just like the whole chemistry issue going on with these two, they're bound to have some early kind of failures as the season starts off?
I think it's going to be awkward as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
How
I
could it
also
not
think
be?
that, yeah, but I also think that once they start playing, like literally as soon as the ball goes up,
Hmm.
um, you know, the expectations are so tempered with the Brooklyn Nets right now
Right.
that it's almost, it would almost be shocking if they didn't exceed the expectations right now just because of such the shit show that has been.
Right.
Uh, Having said that, if we weren't talking about Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant, and Ben Simmons, you want to throw him in the mix. It's like if there's three players in the league that could contribute to a dumpster fire, you know, equally, it would be them. So
Right.
I could see it going the other way too. It's just hard to believe that even with all the shit going on, it's still Kevin Durant. It's still Kyrie Irving. I'm not going to count Ben Simmons in there yet because I do want to see him play before I'm going to say it's still Ben Simmons. But
Right.
like they still have a solid team there. They do. I still like that Royce O'Neal pickup. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a game changer, but I think it was a nice pickup. I think Harris is going to be back. So I think they have, then Curry's there too. I mean, like they have a good team. They have a good team. It's hard to envision them not coming out swinging, and just kind of shutting everybody up.
Mm-hmm. Do you do you think that Brooklyn is like, could it be a possibility that Brooklyn is just trying to show Durant that they're entertaining this, but they really have no intentions of moving him? Because that's the other thing I've been looking at, or I guess reading, is that this is all just a smokescreen for them trying to appear that they're trying, like them basically trying to show him that, look, we're out here trying to trade you. We're just not getting what we want in return. But is there anything that they could really get in return that would equal that value in their eyes? Or do you think it's all just a matter of we're playing this game, showing him that we're trying, but we have no intentions of moving you? Is that somewhere possibly, is that something that's possibly going on, do you think?
Uh,
Or do you think if the price is
in a
right, they
way,
will
yeah.
move?
But yeah, no, I think if the price is right, they're gonna move them. I think, like I think what they're doing now is only what is best for the team and the franchise going forward. And making a bad move for Kevin Durant, and quite honestly, anything other than a pretty good trade for them is a bad move
Mm-hmm.
if you're trading away Kevin Durant. So um, I forgot where I'm going with. Oh, that's why I think at this point the best move for the franchise is just to kind of keep going with what they have.
Right.
And I mean the most important part of that whole thing is he's locked into a 4-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, and if they do a good job of like you said, trying to trade him, listening to him, but still kind of building around him, doing what they can for this season. If they can't find a good deal for him, like giving him an opportunity, giving him the stage,
Mm-hmm.
um, why leave?
Right. And all it takes is a matter of 20 games to start the season. They win 15 and they look like the hottest team in the NBA. Winning will solve a lot of problems. Now, it doesn't solve every but it will solve a lot of problems. So
Oh yeah, it will.
I'm with you in the sense that it could just be a matter of when the ball's tipped up, things slowly kind of get swept under the rug. And when you add a guy like Ben Simmons, if he starts thriving in that system and looks really, really good, well, then Durant goes, hey, I
He's the
actually,
X factor.
right, and I actually have more help here than I maybe thought or realized I did. So I think that's going to be really important to see how it pans out early. But I just don't really know if Brooklyn even plans on trading him now that I'm seeing this. And I think the issue could also be centered around, and correct me if I'm wrong, that teams aren't willing to pay this price for him because any team that does will then no longer be a contender. I think that's another issue that's really at play here. Am I wrong about that?
I'm not. Do you mean like you can't put that package together? No team can put a package like that together without gutting their entire team.
Exactly. And then at that point, it's like,
Yeah.
well, then why did we even trade for him? We're not even a contender at this point because we've traded all these assets away that we need to contend with him. So I think that's the problem that's facing a lot of teams. And I think draft picks would probably be the only way to actually get it done because obviously then no draft pick is going to help you win a title. So I think that's probably the only way that it would be a team with these draft picks. So that's why I think when you look at teams like these OKCs and these kind of sleepers that we've talked about, they actually start to make a lot more sense when you look at them because at that point it's like a team that can trade away picks then says, well, okay, like these are years away from me really helping our team win. It just doesn't seem to me like there's any deal on the table like that Kawhi DeMar deal where it was like you're not
No, no.
losing, the franchise. Like we brought Kawhi in, yes, we gave up DeMar and Pirtle, but we're not gutting, we're not throwing out Lowry and we're not giving up on OG and there was nothing even
Well, at
included
the
in that
time, it
sense.
was insane that Pascal or OG were not included in that trade, and it's even more insane looking back on it now.
Right, right, and especially because Demar left too. Another big one, right? Like Demar's not even with the franchise anymore now. Demar, in all due respect, Demar has been playing out of his mind. So I think that was a very good piece to get back. Unfortunately, it just didn't really work out. But DeMar had some great seasons in San Antonio. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, you'd think they would have wanted one of our younger pieces that they could have built around. So do you think our teams looking at that trade as caution? Do you think are there teams around the league that look at that Masai deal with the Spurs and they go, okay, well, we can't do this because this has left them in a totally useless position in the sense that they have nothing to show for Kawhi now?
I mean, yes and no, but like I say no because I think honestly, like front offices these days are so smart that like yeah, they might have a little like snickering and whatever murmurs if they see that it's Masai calling, it might be like, oh, watch out, like as a joke,
Right.
right? But I like these guys are all really smart. They know what they're doing. It's so I mean, like that San Antonio trade, that San Antonio Toronto trade, right? Like looking back on it, it's hard not to say like that's a terrible trade for San Antonio, But that's exactly what San Antonio wanted
Mm-hmm.
at that time in their thing. Looking back on it, it is what it is. But at that time, for a variety of different reasons, that's exactly what they wanted. I think they even sent money over so that we saved even more money in that trade.
Mm-hmm. I remember that there was like
You know,
cash
like
considerations in
like
the
they
deal.
threw like a cherry on top for us.
Right.
Like
Right.
Toronto was accepting a trade. I don't think that was Masai really. Like he was brokering it for sure, but I don't. I think it was, tell us what you want. You can't have these guys or whatever, and we'll make it happen. It was more like that.
Right. So
And obviously, I don't know for sure. I could be
no, but I feel you. Like I don't think it was as much of this one gives me a lot more sense that Masai is the one making the phone call, wanting to get Kevin Durant. Where I think last time it I don't want to say fell into his lap, but I think the opportunity
It kind
was
of did.
there. Where and then it just kind of was like pull the trigger.
Yeah, he made himself available, but it did kind of fall into his lap, I think.
Right. And
And not to take anything away from Masai,
no, because
he's the GOAT.
and also and also you have to have the balls to accept that trade to trade away.
Oh
a guy
yeah,
like DeMar,
everybody's
right?
pissed if you're trading DeMar. There's no doubt
Right,
about it.
right. Because like when he first made that move, the city was like enraged. Like you can go back and look at the comments. Go look at what
I
people were
was
saying on
pissed at
Instagram.
first
Oh,
when I heard about that.
everyone was kind of pissed just because we loved DeMar so much. But I think,
It didn't take long though.
yeah, no, it didn't really take long because once you saw a glimpse of Kawhi, it was like, okay, well,
Oh, not well. For me, it was just once you realize like, okay, what are we getting? What are we getting here?
Yeah.
And like, Kawhi at the time, while he had a couple like MVP caliber seasons or at least one before, he had been out for a whole year, and there wasn't much buzz around Kawhi except that like, he seems like a guy with a bad attitude who doesn't want to play for the Spurs because he's injured or not injured or like it wasn't a great look for him either coming in. So.
Mm-hmm. And there was
Anyway.
there was a whole backstory on how legitimate is the injury and is he faking the injury. There was all this talk going on.
Crazy.
So yeah, it was an interesting situation, but I thought this was worth mentioning in the kind of this Brooklyn saga that we're still going through. Boston being kind of the main news story of the day that broke, which luckily broke right before we went live. But to me, if I'm Brooklyn, I'm looking at Jaylen Brown as the probably the best asset I can get in return because I don't think they're getting Scotty, just based on what I've seen and heard. I don't think they're gonna get. I just don't think a lot of teams want to part with these young players like that. But I think Boston's just in a position that's very, very. Boston's in a good position to pull this off because they have such a deep team that if they trade Jaylen Brown and picks, just say, and maybe Marcus Smart, well, then you look at their other pieces and you go, okay, they could still win with this team. So I think that's why on paper it makes the most sense when you look at kind of the direction of both ways. But still, I don't know if that's enough for Brooklyn, and I don't think Boston is trying to lose their picks. I think that's something that Brad Stevens is working really hard on. I think he really is against I think he's trying to keep this within the same timeline as like Tatum and these guys they have, but I don't think he's trying to necessarily go 6, 7 years in the future, 5, 6, 7 years in the future to scalp that future prospect of these picks or whatever.
I think for any team that doesn't have like picks that are not their own,
Mm-hmm.
that would literally be sacrificing their future. Because I know that's what Brooklyn wants, right? They want the 3 or 4, whatever the max picks you can get into the future,
Mm-hmm.
pick swaps in between all around. Like that's literally the best that they can do, and they're asking for that. And I think any team, which is most teams, that doesn't have other teams' picks to kind of sprinkle in there instead of using their own.
Mm-hmm.
It's really tough to do. I know it's for Kevin Durant, but it's a tough decision. It's a really, we've seen those kind of trades backfire many, many times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For sure. Um, you mentioned a good point that I didn't really think about, but Malcolm Brogdon being there, that kind of gives them a little bit more option in terms of moving a guy like Smart, where like before, I guess they got Brogdon, I would have said they probably never would have wanted to move Smart, but Smart, Jaylen Brown, and picks. If you're Brooklyn, does that move the needle for you?
I think it has to be like all their picks, but I think that's the best they could do. That would move the needle for me if I'm Brooklyn, yeah.
Right.
But
Right.
I
And,
think probably Brooklyn countered with something, and then Boston said, we'll wait. Maybe not a hard no, but we'll wait.
right. Because they're essentially they're just trying to see like if why accept the offer when they kind of know that Brooklyn doesn't have much else going on, right? It's just to
Exactly.
cave into an offer when you could maybe save yourself 2-3 picks. It's tough.
Exactly. And
It's
that could be a lot.
right. That could be another huge deal, even if you don't use those picks. That could be another massive trade you make in the future to pair someone with Kevin
That's it.
Durant. That could be all the
That's it.
difference, right? So, yeah, kind of hard to say on that one. But that was my big kind of party foul I had. And again, I don't know if I want to classify it as a party foul, but I just in the sense that it leaked and Jaylen Brown's pissed, I think I had to kind of slide it in there.
And Jalen Brown should be pissed.
Yeah, because I mean, I think in his eyes, he had a better finals than Jason Tatum. And
Well, and even just to be, he's really fucking good.
yeah.
He's really young, and I think he's been kind of building something in Boston,
Hmm.
and all that. Like it's a business, but he should be pissed. I'd be pissed.
Now, does this affect him playing in Boston next season? Does this affect him wanting
I
to
don't
be
think
there?
so. He doesn't seem the type to be a whiner, but
Hmm.
I suppose we'll see.
Right. Because it would just be a matter of like you just being petty and being like, you don't want me. Like players do that all the time, but some might not get bothered as much as others. So it's kind of interesting to think about. Now, I did want to see if you had any other party fouls for this week. That was the main one I could think of. Obviously, it broke today, so that was kind of all I had. But was there anything else you can think of in terms of party fouls? If not, it's cool. We can move to life of the party. I have a few for that. But
Why don't we move to let's move on, and if we get stuck at the end, I'll bring something up.
sure. Okay, so life of the party. I wanted to say that, and this could probably also fall into buy, sell, hold, but I thought it was kind of intriguing to see the Raptors' name on top of the list for the Donovan Mitchell sweepstakes. I don't know if you saw that, but there was a report that the Raptors are heavily interested.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of made me excited because I do like the idea of Donovan in Toronto. The more and more I think about it, if we can't get KD, I'm like, damn, Donovan would be a pretty nice consolation prize. But
Agreed.
what's it going to take to get a guy like Donovan Mitchell in Toronto? Or what do you think it would take? I would assume OG is part of that. And I would assume some picks. Does that move the needle for Utah? Utah's clearly trying to tank next season. They're clearly going after this Victor kid, Wembanyama or whatever they pronounce his name, but they've clearly made this this like very evident just with their moves, moving Gobert obviously. But there was a video that leaked. Funny enough, it was a video of Victor playing 1-on-1 at age 16 versus Gobert, and people are like laughing, saying, "Oh, this is when Utah knew they wanted to tank for this kid." But do you believe that Utah would be willing to take OG and some picks back for Donovan Mitchell? Does that entice you if you're Utah? And if you're Toronto, are you making that trade to get a guy like Donovan Mitchell back when, in all reality, I would probably say OG is a more reliable defender. He doesn't need the ball in his hands as much. He's more catch and shoot guy. you could probably make the argument that OG actually fits our system a little bit better just because we have guys like Fred and Gary Trent and guys who will want to be, touching the ball, Siakam. Does that make sense for Toronto to bring in a guy like Donovan Mitchell, or at least to you? What do you think of the idea?
Well, I would love getting a player like Donovan Mitchell, but here's where I sit with this. We need a guy like Donovan Mitchell on our team, but what we would need right now, just looking at the roster, ideally on paper, I think we need like a Donovan Mitchell type, like a four-man Donovan Mitchell, kind of coming off the bench as a scorer, kind of dynamic guard. Like I think that's what we need, and so we could plug in Donovan Mitchell for sure, but I think he's probably a little better than what we actually need. So the reason I'm saying that is it's a bit tough for me to swallow losing OG and picks to because honestly, first of all, that wouldn't be enough. You got to throw in more money for cap. So they would probably ask for Gary Trent and OG, and I don't think that's crazy, but I don't think I would do it.
Yeah, that's hard. That's really hard. And picks? You think picks as well?
It's tough to throw picks on top. I'm already stuck just with those two players. I'm already stuck thinking about it. So I don't know. The tricky thing with Utah is that, like, I guess, yeah, they're going full tank, but, Donovan Mitchell's what, like 23?
24.
Or is he a little older?
He's a little older. He came into the league not as a freshman, so I think he's like 24, 25, I would assume.
Okay. Well, I guess that makes a little bit more sense, but still, like, you got this guy who's young player. You can't say he's not a young player. Young, like, kind of budding star player.
Right. Who's improved.
Who's made some noise in the playoffs already.
And improved.
Sorry, go ahead.
And improved. I just wanted to say, and improved every single year. It like, truly, like, he's improved every single year, so I just wanted to throw that in. But continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's good. And he plays like a leader.
Definitely.
Definitely. From the swag that he has on the court and stuff. Sure. Like, he plays like a leader.
Couldn't agree more with that. Yeah.
And so the reason I'm saying this is that it's just kind of funny to me, or maybe interesting, that Utah is going to tank so they can get a young guy in to build around him. But it's like, you got one right now, and really you want, like,
right.
Basically what they're saying is he's not good enough for them, or he's not, maybe not, I shouldn't say that, but maybe he's not the player that they want to build around. But I don't know, maybe he's not a generational player, but it's just like,
what more
I just have trouble. Yeah, like if they were to make the trade for Gary Trent Jr. and OG Anunoby, it's like, why?
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
So I think they want the picks.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was kind of playing at. Is like, does that even match their timeline with what they're trying to do? Because by the time Victor, just say they land Victor, right? And there's no guarantee they will, but just say they land this kid who's clearly like, this kid's supposed to be the most hyped thing since Zion, LeBron. He's one of those big names that everyone's.
He's like this 7'3" guy out of France or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, okay. Yeah, that's him. And everyone wants him. Everyone's planning to tank for him. At least all the bad teams, and they're just saying like they're saying his ceiling is like a true Giannis. But he's already a better shooter than Giannis was at that age, and it's incredible. And there's no one who really moves at him like at 7'3". But I think the problem is that timeline. Like when you think about it, if Victor develops and takes a few years to get going, well then is Donovan Mitchell going to be in that time frame? But then I ask myself, is OG going to be in that time frame at that point? So I'm with you that I don't really know if that adds up, and I think that on paper, what would make sense if they're really trying to do this tank thing would be probably just get a slew of picks and just go full OKC and like totally rebuild around a bunch of picks, have a bunch of cap space.
That's why I think he's going to New York.
Right, because New York would probably be willing to give those picks up, right?
Well, they have their picks, and then they have 4 more
that they acquired for
some of them, which they got at the draft,
right? Right.
But they've got I think 8 in total that they could potentially trade.
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of makes me think, like, why not take a run at Durant? But whatever.
Right.
But I think he's going to go to New York. I think Donovan Mitchell or Kevin Durant. I think way more chances Donovan Mitchell is trade like within the next week, 2 weeks.
Interesting.
If you ask me, obviously I could be wrong, but
Do you think that's because of like what you talked about, that they're just because Utah has more incentive, I guess, to move him than a Brooklyn, because if Utah doesn't move him, it's going to affect their record. Like Donovan will help them win games. And that's not really this
Exactly.
counterintuitive for what they're trying to do to get Victor. So it's like,
Clearly, they're not building around him, so they want
no.
to get rid of him. So,
Why do
and
you
that's it.
why do you think it is? Is it just timeline? Is it just like they don't like something about his game? Like I just don't see any red flags in Donovan at all. As
No, well, I mean, the only one is his height. But even then,
okay,
like
fair.
he's played as though it's not a problem
Yeah.
the way he's played, anyways.
Yeah, no, for sure. And he's looked incredible in the I think like you said it best, like the playoffs, he's been really, really good. That's another
He
really
turns it
good
on in the
sign.
playoffs, man. That's what the
Yeah,
best do.
right. And that's just it's crazy to see them trading a guy like that. Now,
I agree.
how do you feel about okay, I know this would never happen because it just wouldn't make sense for Utah in terms of like
Sure.
in terms of time frame getting Van Vliet. So just ignore that aspect of it. But how do you
Yeah.
feel about a Van Vliet Donovan? If you were just to swap Van Vliet and Donovan Mitchell right now, do you think do you like that idea for Toronto? I know that's never going to happen, but I'm just trying to imagine like are they would they plan on keeping Van Vliet beside Donovan? Because we kind of talked about this. That would also be a pretty small backcourt at that point too. Like we're pretty
It would
tiny at
be.
that
It
point.
will be. But we played with Kyle Lowry and Fred Van Vliet
That's true.
starting at the 1 and 2 for a long time. And
That's
while
true.
I didn't love it, they're okay with. And our three-headed monster on defense, and
Hmm.
they're guarding the backs. But I don't know. Yeah, if I'm just talking about the Toronto side, there's no question I would make that trade. Really hurts to see Van Vliet go, but there's no question I would do that.
Okay. Okay. I guess why I'm asking is I'm trying to gauge how you value Donovan, how the league values Donovan, and how we value Donovan moving forward. Because I'm kind of with you. Like I don't understand Utah's idea and like having to trade him. Like it seems desperate in the sense that they're like now they're finally kind of warming up to this idea, but it's like I like it seems like he's done nothing to really question his like loyalty to the franchise, his work ethic, improving every single year, turning it up in the playoffs. Still relatively young. I did look up his age when you were talking there. He's 25, so he's not. He's about
Okay.
mid age. Mid age. I know that's probably not in their timeline for right now, right? But it's hard to imagine, especially because he's homegrown. They drafted him. They got him fairly late in the draft. He had turned out to be such a steal in that draft that it's like those are typically the guys you want to keep. But then I mean, hey, look at Tyrese Halliburton. So I guess you never know. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Utah handles this situation, what they think is best for them moving forward. I think I'm in alignment with you though that picks would probably be in their best interest, so they could kind of look at probably losing these next couple of years to get some good assets. But
I got speaking about Utah, I got a Westbrook trade idea with Utah.
okay, let me hear it.
It's not my favorite Westbrook trade idea, don't get me wrong, but I think if they're looking to trade Donovan Mitchell, like we were saying,
Yeah.
they're ripping it down and trading everybody, and they've got a good handful of players that I'm sure they could get at the very least, a first round pick for.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes them sound worse than what I'm trying to build them up as. But anyways, some of them are on big contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you were to do Russell Westbrook for Mike Conley and Bojan Bogdanovic, you probably save a little money as the Lakers.
Okay.
Um, I know it's not like the sexiest, flashiest
Nah,
thing.
but even just if you take Bogdanovich and Westbrook and you swap them on paper, that's a better fit for the Lakers for sure. I don't think anyone's
Well,
arguing that.
plus you got Conley.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
and the reason I think Utah would at least consider this, like Lakers probably would have to throw a pick in there.
It's because
But the reason
Westbrook will lose them games. I'm sorry. I know.
no,
Is that what
no,
you're
no,
getting
no.
at?
Actually, probably that I don't think he would. I think he'd probably they wouldn't be as good as last year, but you can't tell Westbrook you're tanking. He'll just take it personally.
Right.
But Conley's getting paid this year about 20 million, and it's the same next year, whereas Westbrook is off the books. So that's why this trade kind of does make sense for Utah. They clear they get that Mike Conley cap out. But again, you probably have to throw in a pick.
Right. That's interesting. That's definitely interesting. I like the idea of bringing in Bogdanovich, and I think he'd be a good fit in the Lakers system. Let's actually move to buy sell trade because this is actually right in line with that.
All right.
Let me throw another one at you. This is
Go.
something that we talked about last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, but this whole Buddy Hield Miles Turner thing, I'm seeing it more and more.
A lot of talk about Buddy right now.
What's I and as much as I want that to happen, because I actually think if you look at that versus Kyrie Irving, I think just getting a guy like Miles Turner would defensively be a lot better than obviously Kyrie Irving. So I think that you could make the argument that it could actually benefit the Lakers a little bit more because
I think so.
Hield is going to be just a knockdown shooter. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. But why would, and this is the one thing I'm failing to understand, I know this probably has to be some sort of a three-way deal, but why would Indiana accept that trade? This is the one thing I fail to kind of understand. Like, they traded Sabonis, they got Tyrese Halliburton. Wasn't the idea then that they were going to keep Turner as their center of the future? Like, or
I would have thought so. And if I'm Indiana, that's what I'm looking at. But apparently not, is the best answer I can give you there.
and why would they do, like, why would Westbrook be, like, I'm just guessing it would have to be routed in some sort of a three-way deal where they're receiving like picks. Lakers probably giving a couple picks, and I'm sure that like something else maybe in a three-way deal for them to get picks. But is that why people are saying this could happen? Because they're just rebuilding and they would get a bunch of picks back. But like, why would,
Yeah.
and then take on Westbrook's contract, which would then be expiring to have cap space, and they've moved Brogdon now, obviously, right? But
Yeah, I mean, as much as Miles Turner, let's just use Miles Turner because not only is he like um, getting paid less money than Buddy Hield, he's a free agent. This like he is an expiring deal, right? So
mm,
like why it's not much of a risk for any team to take him either. And he's a very productive player. So like why wouldn't the league have more interest? And I think the main reason is that the teams that do want him probably don't have, the assets really to throw in there that would make sense. And then the teams that do just don't want him because they either have their center spot filled already. And, the way the game is going, there's just not a lot of emphasis on the center spot, even though Miles Turner would be more of like the modern day five than anything else.
sure.
So I think there's a bit of that. But I think the reason I always said Buddy and Miles Turner is because I think a lot of teams are going to stay away from Buddy Hield because of his contract,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's only one more year after this, and it goes down. Like
Oh, I
it's
didn't know
it's
that.
one of those contracts where it's 21 this year, and then it's less than 20 next year. So
That's
you know,
that's Buddy Hield at like
there's
18,
that.
19 million isn't terrible too.
Well, exactly right, and so I think I don't even think you need a third team. Honestly, I think if they offered Westbrook and the two picks, I think they could get that done. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they asked for Taylor Horton Tucker too.
Right. That's kind of I think what I was reading as well. But do you think it's the Lakers waiting to pull that trigger?
Yeah,
Or
I do.
and do you think they're really
Yeah.
just trying to see if Kyrie or are they so it is
Yeah, because I think LeBron wants Kyrie, and not to put anything on LeBron, but I think LeBron wants Kyrie, and I think the front office maybe is leaning more towards this one, or the front office doesn't mind making the Kyrie trade, but they don't want to send two picks out, and Brooklyn is saying, give us the two picks or it's not happening.
mm,
Um, so I think there's some. I don't think it's like a war, but I think there's some internal like back and forth going on this
conflicts.
one. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
What do you lean to, like which one do you lean towards? And if you were the Lakers, if you're Rob Pelinka and you're making this move, obviously you're concising with LeBron and that's a big part of this decision, but
Yeah.
what are you leaning towards just as a fan or I guess just as someone if you were trying to build the best possible basketball team, which one would you lean towards?
Yeah.
Because Lakers, when you think Lakers, the Kyrie one kind of makes more sense because it's that star power, it's that flashiness, it's that scoring, it's that LeBron Kyrie show backing together, it's that storyline, it's that excitement in LA. But then you go defensively, Miles Turner, Anthony Davis, like that's pretty scary. That kind of gives me this
Beastly.
a similar vibe to this Cat Gobert thing in a sense. So mind you that both of those guys can actually stretch the floor, like Gobert can't. So that's one thing that would be a little bit different about it. But
I think honestly, man, I think like if I'm playing 2K,
mm-hmm,
I'm probably doing the Miles Turner Buddy Hield.
mm-hmm,
But if in real life, I think I might lean for Kyrie,
mm-hmm,
and a big part of it would be um, to appease LeBron.
right.
And because as much as I like the idea of Miles Turner and Buddy Hield is such a perfect fit, um, if you were to get Kyrie Irving, you've got the guard spot locked down, you got the wing spot locked down, and you got your big locked down.
Right.
You
And
know,
then it's
and,
just
and
additional pieces. It's gravy. It's
that's it. And you just get those veterans on 1 year minimums for the rest of their careers, and you'd be fine.
right, right. Yeah, no, I think I'm with you. That's it. It's just a hard one to gauge because like you think of the defensive potential of Davis and Turner, and it's very scary. But then you think of the Showtime element of LA, and you go, well, Kyrie on paper is the perfect fit here. Um, so yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. It's hard to say. It's hard to say which one would be better. You could make the argument that if the Kyrie one doesn't fall through and they end up going with Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, you could make the argument that that could be a blessing in disguise for them. Like who knows? Like
Yeah, I don't think they can lose. If they do one of these, it's like they can't really lose, honestly.
right,
I think it's both of them would be great. To think that they're sending Westbrook out and getting back, one of those two packages.
right.
I mean, that's a win.
How long do the Lakers have? Or not how long do they have?
What?
How long are they waiting on this Kevin Durant Kyrie thing to unfold before they pull the plug on the Buddy Hield or they make the move on the Buddy Hield Miles Turner trade? How long do you think they're giving this? Like, would they give this into preseason? Would they go into the season with Westbrook and AD? Would they what do you think their timeline for like waiting this out
I
is?
think like once training camp starts, I would be surprised if any moves happened really till like December at the very least, once the free agents are able to be traded again.
Okay.
I mean, obviously we've seen it happen, but I would think that you want to go into training camp with the team that you want to go with. And if you're going to make a move like this, you're going to want a training camp, get everybody on the same page and all that.
For sure.
I would think so anyway. So that's probably that's what I'd say. So like maybe another month and a bit.
Do you think that Durant to the Lakers is still off the table, or like I really haven't heard much about that? But buy, sell, hold. Like, what's your thoughts on that idea? Still?
Like AD for Durant.
Yeah, the one that was rumored at first, really just went nowhere. Seemed
I
like it
think
went nowhere, but is that something
I
that could still
I
possible?
honestly think if the Lakers, the only thing that would hold that up is if Brooklyn wanted more picks, all right? But if Brooklyn said was to take Anthony Davis and the Lakers 2 picks for Kevin Durant, I think that's a win for Brooklyn.
Yeah, interesting.
I
And
really do.
what if they
I
threw?
think Lakers are better off keeping AD myself, but
What if they included Westbrook, Kyrie in the fold there? Does that change how you see that trade? If it's the package of Kyrie and
I don't
Durant,
think Brooklyn does it in that case.
interesting. Even if they, well, I guess now they have the leverage in the sense that Kyrie has said that he'll play there. So now they're like, well, maybe we don't trade Kyrie. Like, is that because what if? Do you think? Or let me throw this one at you. Buy, sell, hold this idea. Do you think Brooklyn would entertain the idea of trading Durant, getting a really good young, like get a Jaylen Brown, get a Marcus Smart, get these great pieces, and then you have a Kyrie Irving, Jaylen Brown, kind of a still Ben Simmons, still pretty competitive team? Like, can you entertain that idea that they would then include Kyrie in that mix to then just kind of go for it next year because they're like, whatever, we don't.
Oh, rather than trading him?
Right, like keep Kyrie in the fold just because they're like, wow, actually, if Kyrie on this team, we're pretty damn good. Like, could you see them entertaining that, or do you think if Durant's gone, he's pretty much on his way out?
I think for the most part, I feel like the latter. Like if Durant's gone, Kyrie's next, and he's on the chopping block.
Right.
I don't think that relationship. Not that I don't think it's fixable, but I think Kyrie wore out his welcome in Brooklyn a long time ago. So I think more than most likely, like 90% sure that Kyrie would be gone, but anything's possible.
I wanted to see if there was any, like, I'm not just at player movement here on NBA.com, or I guess every reported deal. We could start going through some of these teams and these moves that were made. There's actually quite a few like we haven't touched on. I don't know if we'll have time to get all of it done today, but I was thinking we could maybe go through a few and just kind of gauge how you think about these moves, or maybe where you think this lands or kind of positions the team.
Okay.
We've talked about a few different ones, but I do have an alphabetical list pulled up. So if you're cool with it, I mean, I think
Let's
we
do it, man.
kind of said we would do this last week, but we can maybe just do half the teams today, maybe half next week if we don't have enough time. But I figured we'd start with Atlanta, work our way down. This is actually a pretty cool list because it shows exactly who was added via free agency, via trade, and who they lost. So if it's cool with you, we'll start with Atlanta. I just kind of wanted to get into, and I actually am going to switch this to the gameplay screen so that people can see what we're looking at here. But boom. So yeah, let's just start with Atlanta. We'll kind of work our way through this list. We don't have to spend too much time on each team. Maybe just give me, I don't think we have the over-unders pulled up right now, but we could probably even do that next week. But similar idea, just give me like thumbs up, thumbs down for the moves made when I read them all out kind of thing. So I'll go through the list, and then you can tell me maybe thumbs up, thumbs down, or why you kind of think that. Okay, so Atlanta Hawks added via free agency Aaron Holiday, Frank Kaminsky. Via trade, they received this offseason Maurice Harkless, Justin Holiday, and obviously DeJounte Murray being the big blockbuster move. They drafted AJ Griffin in the draft and a guy named Tyrese Martin at 51 overall, and they ended up losing Kevin Huerter, Danilo Gallinari, Jock Lawndale, and DeLon Wright. So there was a few other free agents that are on the board here that haven't really been talked about. Kevin Knox is unrestricted. Lou Williams is unrestricted. Timothy Loaru Cabaret is restricted. Gorgie Jang is restricted. So still a little bit of work to be done, I think, with some of their free agents. But I think the bread and butter of this Atlanta one would obviously be DeJounte Murray. So thumbs up, thumbs down for the Atlanta Hawks offseason based on the list I've provided.
Yeah, I give it a thumbs up, man. I give it a thumbs up, even though I think they did give a lot for DeJounte. I can't believe it. I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 picks.
Yeah, I think it was 4. I think it was 4.
But regardless, they're kind of going for it. That was the perfect fit that they wanted, and they went for it. And I always respect that. And I do think it's a good fit. I think DeJounte does everything that Trae Young doesn't do,
right.
And vice versa, you know, so they should complement each other very well. Mm-hmm. They still have some really nice pieces on this team. I'm a huge DeAndre Hunter fan. Yeah. I really like the AJ Griffin, their draft, the first drafter you said there.
Yeah.
That's 16, and I know they got, I think he might be a gem. And I like, they got Bogey. They still got Clint. They got John Collins, who still might get traded. That's a big trade piece.
Yeah, for sure. And him and Trae actually played at the, I think it was the Drew League the other day, and they looked really good together. So, and John Collins is still more than capable of being a very, very good player. So I think that it's going to be exciting to see how they all fit, all the pieces fit together. And what's their...
I think they got better.
Yeah, for sure. I think so, too. What do you think their starting lineup looks like? Do you think they go Trae, DeJounte, Hunter... Collins, Clint?
Yeah, I guess.
Or could you see them bringing
Clint
Clint
off the bench? I would just slide everybody up one position. I'd put in, I don't know, a wing in there.
Yeah, maybe like...
they got Bogey off the bench, too. Eh?
Right. Yeah, they do. And they still have to re-sign Kevin... not Kevin Huerter. What's his name? Kevin Knox. Who they traded...
True.
They traded... what's his name there? The guy who played with Zion and RJ. What's his name? Cam Reddish. That was the Cam Reddish. Last season, yeah. That was the Cam Reddish deal. Okay, so thumbs up for the Atlanta Hawks. Good to know. Let's move to B, Boston Celtics. So a few moves. They've added, most recently, Danilo Gallinari via free agency. They obviously traded for Malcolm Brogdon from the Pacers. In the draft, they had
Steal.
Right. That was a great move. A great move. I think we can all agree on that. J.D. Davidson was their 53rd overall pick, and they ended up losing Daniel Tice, Nick Stauskas, Aaron Naismith, Juwan Morgan, and Malik Fitz. So I think when you just look at that list from what you're losing to what you're adding, I would have to say thumbs up. What's your thoughts? I'm assuming you're in agreement with me.
I have trouble saying the Boston Celtics didn't have the best offseason.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Come on.
Yeah,
they just went to the finals and they improved their team.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's enough, but man.
Brogdon's Brogdon's a good fit. And you could do a lot worse than Brogdon, I think, too, right?
Brogdon is one of the most steely trades I've seen in a maybe not in a while, but like in the last couple of years. Like that's a steal, man. For just one draft pick.
Yeah. People forget that Brogdon was, I believe he won Rookie of the Year, first of all.
He was Rookie of the Year,
because I believe Embiid got hurt that year. And Brogdon has been 50-40-90 before, I believe. And if not 50-40-90, he was very, very close. There's not a lot of players in the NBA that can do that. And That is no joke. When you can go 50, 40, 90, it's like you can pretty much count them on two hands. Players that
And
can,
be the defender that he is.
exactly. So I think on paper, like they'll probably start him at the point guard. I would assume. And
Brogdon? I think Brogdon's coming off the bench.
really
Yeah.
interesting. You don't think they'll put
I think their
Smart at the two?
starting lineup will be the same as they had in the finals with the two bigs.
Oh, yeah, true. They got to still find a way for Williams and Horford to coexist there.
And I think Brogdon and Derek White come off the bench, and that's scary. And Danilo too.
Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah, that's a really good bench. They
not a
got
lot of holes in there.
yeah, they added a lot of depth. That's super interesting. Okay, so thumbs up to the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Even though fuck the Celtics.
So Brooklyn added T.J. Warren in free agency, which I actually didn't realize they added T.J. Warren in free
Yeah,
agency.
that's a big one.
Edmund
I forgot to
Summer,
mention.
and then they traded for Royce O'Neal from the Jazz. They lost Andre Drummond and Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown being one of those pieces
It kind
that,
of hurts.
yeah, Bruce Brown was someone who was actually a really, really important role player for them last year. And then on top of that, they do have some unrestricted free agents in LaMarcus Aldridge, Goran Dragic, who I believe has already agreed to a deal somewhere else, David Duke Jr., Blake Griffin, and James Johnson. And then obviously we have the Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant thing going on. So thumbs up, thumbs down for Brooklyn. I mean, probably would have to say the obvious would be thumbs down, like just given the context of the situation. But
I guess. I mean, I would say like this because I don't think it's really Brooklyn's fault for what's it's not their fault, but you know, I don't put it all on them for the dumpster fire. I don't put it all on the players either, but
slightly out of their control some
Yeah.
aspects, I think. Okay, so we'll say thumbs sideways for Brooklyn because who knows, maybe they make a Jaylen Brown trade and we say thumbs up based on what they were dealt. Charlotte Hornets via free agency, no acquisitions. Via trade, no acquisitions. In the draft, they did get Mark Williams at 15, which I think was a pretty sneaky pick. I think we both kind of liked that pick actually a lot for them. I think for me, why I would have to say thumbs down is because of the whole Miles Bridges situation, unrestricted free
And
agent, Montrezl Harrell. There were some rumors today, actually, that Kemba Walker
saw those.
could make a return to Charlotte. I'm not sure if you saw that, but
They need a good story, man. Make it happen, please.
I know. And I think that would be good for both Kemba and Charlotte because I think Kemba in Charlotte was clearly at his best, but I think that's one of those guys they could bring in and be a really, really good leader for LaMelo and for the team. And Kemba handled
Absolutely.
himself really, really well considering Tibbs pretty much just scorched him out of rotation last year. And it didn't really work out too well for the Knicks. And when Kemba did play, he had great spurts. Like Christmas Day, he played great. And it was just a whole bunch of stuff. But I think it would be a good storyline for Charlotte. I want to say Charlotte probably thumbs down as of now because obviously no free agency acquisitions, no trades. Yes, they got Mark Williams in the draft, but this whole
I
Miles...
do like that draft pick. I do like it.
Me too. Miles Bridges, though, that whole situation...
Yikes.
it's tough. So yeah, probably have to give a thumbs down to the Charlotte Hornets at least for now this offseason. Okay, Chicago Bulls. They added in free agency a piece that not a lot of people are talking about, but they were the ones who actually landed Andre Drummond.
Right.
They did end up losing Troy Brown Jr., who went to the Lakers. So that's kind of important. They didn't make any trades. And then free agents, they do have Tristan Thompson, Matt Thomas, Malcolm Hill, Tyler Cook, all free agents. Now, I believe they did sign Levine or to an extension that's not mentioned here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of important to play on, obviously. So I think in that sense, when you look at that with Drummond, and you slot in like a healthy Lonzo and improving DeMar DeRozan, I would probably say this is a thumbs up from me, because they were able to lock down Levine. There was a lot of concern about losing him, so I think that's a really important thing for them. And I think Drummond will be a good fit for them. I think Drummond showed signs last year that he's still effective. He still can pass the ball very well. I don't think he's going to be your game-changing center. But I think it's
He's the first big off the bench,
Right. And I think that's kind of where he's carved out his role. And similar to Dwight Howard, how that kind of panned out, I think like Dwight found a role off the bench that worked really, really well. And I think Drummond's kind of, doing the same. So I would probably say thumbs up, just in the sense that they were able to retain Levine and also bring in a guy like Drummond. Probably like a slanted thumbs up, because I wouldn't want to say it's a full thumbs up there, but I'd probably have it in there. Just I wouldn't say they got worse. You know what I mean?
You can't give them a thumbs down. I'm with you, man. I think their priority 1, 2, and 3 was to get Levine, and they did that. So
Right.
There you go.
And then
Besides
Drummond's.
that, it's they're running it back.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Cleveland was able to, again, not listed here, but I'll start with this. Darius Garland, just because I know this off the top of my head, he signed a 5-year extension, so that's really, really good for them, obviously. Free agency, they were able to add Ricky Rubio, Raul Neto, and Robin Lopez. Now, I thought Rubio was there last year during the season, so I don't know why it's saying Rubio, but anyway. And then during the draft, they were able to get Luke Travers, Khalifa Diop, Agabaji, but the one that a lot of people are excited about is Isaiah Mobley, because that's Evan's younger brother. So kind of cool that the two brothers are going to be paired up in Cleveland. I think that's exciting for just the idea that, Evans gets to play alongside his brother, gives him some incentive to stay there long term. And I think, yeah, like the guys like Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, I think they're only going to improve. So I'm pretty excited for Cleveland's trajectory. I think a move no one really talks about from last season that we didn't really get to see fully was Karis LeVert.
Yeah.
So I think Karis LeVert's going to find a nice little shooting guard role, however long Colin Sexton remains out for. So, yeah, I would say Cleveland, for the most part, nothing too exciting, but I wouldn't be able to say it's a thumbs down by any means. I think probably sideways thumb for the most part, but I think, yeah, being able to retain Garland and, keep their core, I think that was pretty important to them to get Garland back. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm watching the Colin Sexton thing really closely. Apparently, there's an offer on the table for him. He wanted about 20 million a year, and I think they're offering him about like 14, 13, something like that.
Okay.
So they're lowballing him a little bit, or probably not a little bit. They're lowballing him for sure, because they know that nobody else is going to offer him anything which they could match. Which is a little bit of a risky move because that could come back to bite him. In a couple of ways. What he might do is just sign the qualifying offer for a year if he bets on himself. Coming off an injury, that's a real risky thing to do, but
Yeah.
he seems like the fiery type of guy that would do that.
It doesn't seem like he would care, kind of, but
Exactly. And then if he does sign it, well, then Cleveland gets Colin Sexton for I think like 3 years on the cheap, and that would be a excellent move. So
you think they're planning on
I think they're doing okay.
Yeah, you think they're planning on trying to keep Sexton? You think that's their game plan is try to keep him and hope no one matches? And do you think there's any team that would match it? Or
it's them that can match. So
that's
would
what
have offered him something.
Right.
It would have happened already, but they could potentially offer him something until the end of free agency. So you never know.
What I meant to say was, do you think another team could beat out the Cavs' offer for him and force Cleveland to match? Like, do you think?
It's possible. I don't know which teams. I know there are some teams that do have cap room. Otherwise, obviously, you could do a sign and trade as well, but those are a little bit more complicated.
Right.
But to answer your question, I think is if another team does offer him more money, I think Cleveland will match. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Let's talk about Dallas because this one's pretty exciting for me. No one actually is talking about this one, but they actually added another big, so the main one obviously being Christian Wood from the Rockets via trade. They did also add JaVale McGee to rotation,
That's right.
which is kind of interesting. I do like the idea of that pick and roll with Luka quite a bit. They drafted Jaden Hardy at 37, who a lot of people are saying could be kind of a steal at 37.
Is he a wing or guard or?
I thought he would. I think he's like a shooting guard. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But I'd have to confirm that. But I've heard the name being floated around as someone that to keep your eye on. They did end up losing Trey Burke, Marquise Chris, Boban, Jalen Brunson. Obviously that one hurts. Trey Burke, I said, Sterling Brown. Do you think, based on Christian Wood coming in, Jalen Brunson going out, how do you value that? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Are you in the middle? Where would you put that for Dallas?
Yeah, I would be more towards thumbs up. I'm not sold completely, but I do really, really like the Christian Wood acquisition. And I'm kind of, Jalen Brunson, that really hurts. But at the same time, if Spencer Dinwiddie can step into that role a little bit more, could be okay. And then you look at Tim Hardaway coming back, which I think will make a big impact as well. So
right.
Do think they're better. I'm not 100% certain or confident in saying that, but if I, put a gun to my head, I'm leaning more towards a thumbs up with them.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think that the Trey Burke thing, or not Trey Burke, Jalen Brunson, I think it could end up, I don't want to say this harshly, but it could be a blessing in disguise in the sense that maybe it just didn't make sense for them to pay him. Maybe he wasn't the player to pair along Luka. And I think they might actually look at that and go, you know what? That's fine. Like, that's fine that we didn't retain. So I think Christian Wood in the rotation, I like it a lot. I'm with you. I want to see how it pans out, but I would probably lean more thumbs up than thumbs down, me personally. So I think I'm with you on that one. Denver Nuggets. They actually added 2 free agents, Bruce Brown, DeAndre Jordan, and via trade they acquired Kentavious Caldwell-Pope from the Wizards and Ish Smith. They did draft with their 21 pick Christian Braun. Don't know too much about. They did end up losing Monte Morris, Austin Rivers, JaMychal Green, Will Barton. And they do have DeMarcus Cousins and Campazzo, who are unrestricted free agents. How do you weigh the Denver Nuggets offseason? Was losing, I think Barton to me was such a big piece for them in the sense that I just saw so much from him throughout the years with Denver. Provides so much. Malone really loved Barton. He played him heavy minutes. Do you think Kentavious for Barton is a kind of a stagnant move? Like, do you think that keeps
Like a wash?
Yeah.
Kind of. I think, it looks like they're going from defense offense or offense defense. And getting more of a vet, I guess. I was never a real big KCP fan. I know he fills his role well.
Yeah. Plays his role.
But that's about as well as much as I would say about him. So I guess they had a really, like, they zoned in on him and they wanted him and they went for it. So okay, we'll see what happens there. Bruce Brown is an interesting one for me, because of, like, he's like 6'3", but he was playing power forward, small forward, shooting.
He was
like he was all over the place in Brooklyn, and he was great at hustling around, cutting, doing all these things off the ball. So when you got a guy like Jokic ready to pass it, I'm interested to see what happens there. It seems like he's just like the perfect little pinball to throw into this, like,
system.
Whatever you want to call it, that Jokic is running there. So
right.
I'm interested to see what happens there.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, I think, as well. I would say for right now, I'm going to say sideways thumb, because I don't know if they got better. I don't know if they got worse. I really have to see how the KCP thing works versus the Barton thing, because the one thing that concerns me with that is Barton did have the ball in his hands actually a lot. Like, when Jokic would go to the bench, Barton would run the show. So I don't see KCP really as that type of player. And now I'm kind of thinking, who's going to run the show? They're probably relying on Jamal Murray coming back this season. I would think that's why they're okay doing this. And then Michael Porter Jr. maybe too. So I think that's kind of in their thing. They still have Aaron Gordon, I believe. So I think that's kind of their game plan. But we'll have to maybe wait and see on that one.
Yeah, I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good this year. I'm not sure if the offseason would be like a thumbs up. Like, I guess I'm kind of with you there. It's maybe sideways. But with the injured players coming back, I think they're going to be better this year.
Okay, let's go to Detroit. This one's kind of interesting because they actually ended up snagging Nerlens Noel and Alec Burks from New York. Kemba Walker is currently there. I don't think he'll be there, though, for the whole season. I think, obviously, we talked about the Charlotte rumors. Their draft, they got their guy, Jaden Ivey, at 5th, who I think they're really, really happy with to pair alongside Cade. Now, they did lose Jeremy Grant, but would you say, for the most part, they've improved?
Traded him, right? They got picks back.
So they traded Grant. They got picks. But based on, Nerlens Noel coming in, Alec Burks, Jaden Ivey, I would probably say that versus Grant, like, I would see, and then obviously the growth from like Cade and Beef Stew and Sadiq Bey. I would say Detroit's a better team this next year than they were last year. Even with losing Grant. So would you say that this warrants a thumbs up just based on getting Ivy at 5 and bringing in guys like Noel and Burke and all that?
100%.
Yeah, me too. Okay. Golden State. This one's kind of interesting. So they did have Dante DiVincenzo, who they added via free agency, which is
like that.
This one really surprised me. Like, he was actually a really, really good piece for Milwaukee for the last few years. Great shooter, played hustle defense, seemed to not feel the moment. I think that's a really good fit. I think he's going to fit right into their system, like, beautifully, actually. Their draft wasn't anything crazy, obviously, because they were picking later, so we'll kind of have to wait and see how that pans out. Now, something worth noting, a couple things worth noting. They did lose Gary Payton. They did lose Otto Porter. They did lose Damian Lee, and they did lose Juan Toscano Anderson. So quite a few role players gone. They still have Bielitsa, who's a free agent. Iguodala's a free agent. Quindary Witherspoon's a free agent. Golden State's interesting because, yes, they've lost these pieces, but they add a guy like DiVincenzo who slots right into rotation, and their young guys are only getting better because look at the Summer League stuff we saw from Kuminga and Wiseman, and we know Moses Moody will probably take a step up, and Clay will probably be even better next season just given, coming off that injury, having the year to play. Golden State, yes, they lost a lot of pieces, but I just don't have it in me to say it's a thumbs down because their trajectory is just still so high, right? So if anything, sideways thumb, but you could definitely make the argument that even after losing those pieces, it's a thumbs up because you had a guy like DiVincenzo and your young guys get better. So,
and I think the draft picks they made were very good.
Yeah,
they got a couple guys out of the draft who I think
Baldwin Jr. Good. Baldwin Jr. I think is the one I've heard the most about at 28th. I haven't looked at Ryan Rollins or Guy Santos as much, but it wouldn't surprise me if those guys end up being a total steal for their pick, just based on how Golden State's drafted in the past and how they typically draft. Yeah, I think if anything, sideways thumb, but probably thumbs up. Just their trajectory is so good. They're so young still that it's hard to imagine them getting worse, right? Houston. Now, this one's kind of interesting. No free agent ads. They did lose, obviously, Christian Wood, like we talked about, and they did waive John Wall. Now, they drafted Jabari Smith at 3, who I think they are pretty high on. They're pretty stoked about that pick. They did add guys like Sterling Brown, Trey Burke, Marquise Chris, Boban Marjanovic. Interesting. Didn't actually realize he landed in Houston. Jabari Smith alone, does that warrant a thumbs up in your eyes? Obviously losing Christian Wood, who I don't think really fit their timeline anyway, but what's your thoughts on the Houston Rockets? Thumbs up, thumbs down? I mean, Jabari Smith at 3 is like a steal to them, I would say. They don't think they thought they were going to get him, but they were locked in for, Paolo, Chet, or Jabari either way. So can we really say this is a thumbs up? And in all fairness, I would say out of every rookie in the Summer League, the one I was least impressed with out of the big 5 was probably Jabari, just based on the way he was handling the ball. I wasn't too impressed. Really didn't look like he had his handle under control. He hit a lot of really nice shots. He's definitely going to be a good player, but I think it's a little underwhelming when you compare it to a Chet or a Paolo. So how are you ranking Houston's offseason? I would probably say mid to thumbs up, but Jabari Smith could easily turn that to a quick thumbs up. But what's your thoughts on the moves they made, and obviously the Christian Wood one as well?
I give them a thumbs up. I think their game plan is clear. They're kind of pulling a bit of an OKC kind of rebuild right now on the fly, although they have some young guys who are really probably ahead of where they should be. So I think they're going to be fun to watch this year, and I'm excited for that. And what was the other thing? That Christian Wood trade I think was good for them. I know they got just a pick, but that's all they need right now. They're obviously they're tanking. I think they're going to get a pick for Eric Gordon as well, and it is what it is. Tank goes on, but I think they're doing okay. So I give them a thumbs up.
All right, there's a lot with Indiana. A lot of moves to talk about. They're most notable for me. I really like the Benedict Mathurin pick. I think it's going to pan out really, really nice.
Yeah.
You lost Brogdon, obviously, traded to the Celtics. Lost Rubio, Stauskas, TJ Warren. So they've lost pieces, but I think when you just look at that Benedict Tyrese backcourt, that gets me really excited. So I would say they're in line with their kind of grand plan here. Obviously, this could change if they move a Miles Turner and a Buddy Hield and get some picks back, but I really like the Mathurin pick, so I want to say thumbs up because I just think it's a really, really good fit. They obviously did lose some pieces, right? Brogdon, Rubio, TJ Warren. Do you think the Mathurin thing will kind of make that easy to swallow as the year goes on? And what do you think of the Tyrese Mathurin backcourt pairing?
Well, I think that's what they're going for. Those two guys, that's what they're planning on. And I really liked Benedict Mathurin coming into this draft. So I'm excited to see what he does. And Tyrese is just going to look good next to anybody, or anybody's going to look good next to him.
Right.
It's kind of close to Houston. I think they're, Houston might be a couple steps ahead in the sense of tearing it down, but I think that's where Indiana's going, and I think they're doing a good job. So I guess I give them a thumbs up too.
Fair. I think I'm with you there too. Um, okay, let's go with. So we're at what are we at here? An hour 9. Okay, we'll probably go with we'll probably go with the two LA teams here, and then we'll end it there because I think that's the halfway point usually. So
Yeah, you don't want to start with an LA team next time? That might be.
oh, sure, we can do that too. Just an easier way. So how about we start? We have the Clippers on the list, then the Lakers. So how
Let's
about
do the Clippers now,
and
and
we'll
we'll
save
save the
Lakers.
Lakers.
Cool,
Yeah, yeah.
cool. So Clippers. Now this one's actually kind of exciting to talk about because I'm actually really excited for them next year. Not only are they going to have Kawhi back, hopefully, Paul George as well, but I really, really like the John Wall addition. Don't think a lot of people are talking about it yet, as they will be, but I think it's a really, really good fit. I don't think he needs to come in there and give them 20 a night. I think he can average, 15, 16 points. That'd be perfect. Maybe a 3 a game, maybe a steal a game. But I think he'll really just be that playmaker that they were missing. That Reggie Jackson really couldn't do at times. They kind of just needed a pure playmaker. And I just really like the idea of John Wall beside Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And then on top of that, the big additions last trade deadline of getting Rocco and Norman Powell in that rotation. I think when you look at their whole rotation, they're pretty scary on paper. So it's very hard for me to say the Clippers are anything but a thumbs up because I think the John Wall addition is a really, really nice fit. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, if it wasn't for Boston, I'd probably say the Clippers had the best offseason. But I'm taking into consideration that trade with Portland, which, you know what, I take back the Brogdon thing. I think that trade was probably the biggest steal in the last couple of years.
The Rocco,
just insane.
Powell,
insane.
yeah. I don't really get it. I don't really know why. I don't really know how they got that done, to be honest with you. Like even now,
Well,
like,
Portland clearly wanted somebody to take Norman Powell, and I guess they had. Did they have Covington too?
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. So I guess
they did.
Man, it's just I don't know. It's like the when San Antonio traded Kawhi. They get at a certain point a team wants to do something specific, and Clippers were the only team that were able to or willing to take in that much money, and they gave up an asset. I think the only asset they gave up was like a rookie, but anyways, it was crazy. Clippers are going to be very strong this year. I think they're scary. I think if it wasn't for the Warriors, I'd probably say they're the team to beat in the West. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I do really like the John Wall acquisition as well. The playmaking thing, absolutely for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's getting to the point where he's probably a little underrated on defense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he can still move his feet, and he's gonna do his part there for sure as well.
Yeah, and obviously we have to see how Kawhi looks coming back in terms of just like schedule, how much he plays early on. But yeah, I think if this team can get to the postseason, which they should have no problem doing, and you're playing the Clippers in the first, second round, I think that's probably the last team you want to face. So I think it'd be hard for me to not say they have a thumbs up of an offseason because I really do like the John Wall fit. And then kind of also playing into, like you said, the Rocco Powell thing. I think on paper they're going to be really scary. They don't have a lot of weaknesses. So
I think on paper they might be the deepest team in the league.
Yeah.
Boston would probably have something to say there, but
sure. But I mean, if I'm looking at Kawhi and Paul George versus Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I'm going Kawhi and Paul George. So yeah,
I'm with you.
You know what I mean? Like I just am. Like there's that's just stronger to me still. Like I don't know. And that's without even seeing, what Kawhi looks like. But I don't think Kawhi's really gonna. I think the only thing that will be stopping Kawhi is just gonna be similar to like the Anthony Davis thing. It's just gonna be injury. I think that's gonna be the only thing that will hold Kawhi back from getting to that level that he's at. So hopefully, we can see a healthy Kawhi Leonard because it's obviously a way more exciting NBA when Kawhi's playing. And the Clippers, I think, they're on the trajectory to be one of those teams that we're talking about at the end of the season next year. And man, who knows? They could possibly win it all. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if the Clippers made the conference finals, honestly. So,
me neither.
With that said, we'll save the Lakers for next week. Who knows? Maybe there's a big move that happens, and that's a perfect place to start off, right? But that's about the halfway point, and we are, I think we're about like an hour 20 now, an hour 15. So we'll cut it there. We talked on quite a bit today. Let me just get back to our intro screen. I think there's still a lot to happen in the off season. I think every day, every couple days, we get kind of hit with a new story that comes out. Like more recently, the Toronto Donovan thing and the Kevin Durant thing today with Boston. So I think there's still a lot that's developing, and I still don't know if we're a week away, 2 weeks away, a month away. It's going to be really interesting to see, but I'm definitely excited for it. Do you know when preseason started? Have they released any type of schedule or anything along those lines? I don't think so yet. I was
I'd say it'd be like mid-October.
I was hoping late September, but maybe I'm just thinking of like the early start last season. But
Could
uh,
be.
just hoping we get basketball as soon as possible. But yeah, even without it, the offseason's been so exciting. There's been so many moves, so many different just things to talk about that I'm sure we'll have a lot to touch on in the next few weeks to come. So yeah, man, I think it was a good show today. We talked on a lot. We'll pick up next week with, well, we'll probably start out as we do usually, and then we'll get into kind of the off-season moves, pick up with the Lakers, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sounds like a plan, bro.
Yeah, man. Nice having you on. Good talking as always. And it's the Block Party.
It's a block party, baby.
Peace out, guys. Have a good one.